very much, Stella. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today, and thank you for inviting me to present on LinkedIn Live. As Stella said, my name is Anne-Marie de Mello. I am a registered mental health nurse, and I am now working, I'm the founder of Minds Matter, doing mental health awareness and first aid for mental health training in the UAE. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming today and joining me to talk about mental health in these new virtual worlds that are being created. I think it's been a really interesting topic to research over the last little while, particularly because I came into this not really being familiar with the subject matter, and I feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland a little bit. I'm the rabbit going down the hole. And it's been so interesting and exciting to learn more about this. So, forgive me. So I'm going to start off by talking about what is mental health. And when you ask somebody what is mental health, you tend to get a description of various diagnoses such as depression or anxiety, or people saying it's happiness, it's sadness, it's loneliness. And none of these actually explain really what mental health is. So mental health is our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, which effectively affects how we behave, our thoughts that we have, how we feel, and how we respond to all of this in our everyday life. It's how we handle stress, how we're able to relate to others and build relationships, and the choices that we make. And I think it's important to remember that every single person has mental health. Mental health is on a continuum, so no day, sometimes hour, can be the same. And it doesn't necessarily mean the absence of a mental illness. It is possible to have good mental health and well-being whilst living with a diagnosed mental illness. And that's usually when people have engaged with treatment and therapies. It's also possible for somebody who has no diagnosed mental illness to still have a low level of mental well-being. And often, this is down to lifestyle choices, habits, learned behaviours, and perhaps not even seeking out the help of a professional who could potentially treat this. So mental illness covers a very broad range of mental health problems. It's not something that you can put into little boxes. And as I've said, it relates to our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviours, and how we relate to one another. Mental illness is still stigmatised though to this day, and is associated with distress, difficulty functioning, and sometimes the more adverse effects for example, violence, physical violence, that we often see in the media. But it is important to say that mental illness is definitely treatable, and seeking out the help of a healthcare professional, a mental health care professional, in the same way you would go to a physical health doctor, they are just as important. And there is so much crossover between your mental health and your physical health as well. So we've been hearing a lot in the media lately about the collapse of cryptocurrencies and the devastating results this has had on people's lives. We know that cryptocurrencies gave many people the opportunities to generate income that they could only have perhaps imagined beforehand. And this is particularly true in developing countries. I read a story recently about a young man in Nigeria, Odosa Iyamuosa. He invested his life savings of $4,000 into Luna. And he was very, very excited about this. He did plenty of research. He spoke to friends about it. But then when Luna collapsed, the value of his token went from $100 to 3 cents. And that has had a devastating impact on his income, and he's obviously lost his life savings. This is one story, and I'm sure there are thousands other stories that are similar to this. So Many people have thought that the lack of safeguarding and regulation mean that investing in cryptocurrencies has been a bit of a gamble. And many people are also hopeful that the impact of these losses is going to lead to more regulation and better safeguarding. So being a startup in this crypto world, it's a big pressure environment, high pressure. People are investing not just money, but they're investing time and they're investing effort. And in the 24/7 world, in this 24/7 world, it's not, bound by, for example, working hours. It's not bound by even living from one country to the next, one continent to the next. So many people are actually spending less and less time in the physical world and isolating from others. You might notice, for example, there's big changes in sleep cycles to be able to keep up with the workload. Eating patterns and relationships are affected. We also know that perhaps spending so much time online does go against the guidelines that we are given, but it can be an addictive behaviour as well. So if you're feeling that when you do leave that virtual world and decide and spend time away from it, if you're finding that you crave to go back, that you're worrying, that you're having, perhaps heart palpitations, if you're sweating, if you're feeling anxious, these can also be signs that perhaps there is a dependency there. There are benefits to these virtual worlds, and I don't want to talk negatively about this, because it's offered great opportunities to people, opportunities that perhaps they didn't have access to in the past, opportunities to make their lives better, make the lives of their families better by being able to invest and being able to have an income from this. There are communities that have been created that are quite tight-knit and support each other. We know that gaming is a huge activity online, and it's a leisure activity. But also many people now are turning to support, for example, mental health support in the online world. So doing therapeutic work is actually becoming more and more common. With the support of either an in-person therapist, or perhaps you're doing WebEx or Zoom sessions as well. So there are lots of benefits, and it means that people can actually access services and resources that they perhaps couldn't have been able to before, which is always a good thing. But we do know that there is impact of the recent events and the collapse of the cryptocurrencies. So we've heard that on Reddit and various social networking platforms that people are talking about ending their life. They're experiencing severe anxiety, they're withdrawing from their families, their communities and their friends, and they're describing experiencing low mood and feeling quite stressed, which is perfectly natural and normal. But obviously if this goes on for a while, then it's obviously going to give people concern. And Odosa in Nigeria said himself, he decided against suicide. He thought about suicide, but he didn't want this to impact on his mother, for example. So there is a vulnerability to this world. People who are vulnerable, particularly new startups, stress the effort and the pressure that brings with it. We can't. It's the sense of the unknown. And I think in the past, people had more confidence in entering into cryptocurrencies. Now they're starting to feel the pressure of, is this going to work out? And there's more uncertainty than ever before. So with the token collapses, that is leading to a lot of stress for people. People are worried about getting themselves into debt or having made great losses and potentially facing unemployment, not being able to have an income to take care of themselves or take care of their families. And when we talk about social isolation, it's interesting because perhaps people have created social groups online or in different virtual worlds, and they've become quite isolated from the physical world. But perhaps the knock-on effect of recent events is that they are potentially isolating themselves from the physical world as well. So that feeling of perhaps guilt or that feeling of failure means people are withdrawing from the physical world as well and the people around them. The working practices of these cryptocurrencies, you know, they are hard going. They are 24/7 in some instances. And we have to be aware that people nowadays, we are working differently, even in the regular so-called 9-to-5 jobs. People are becoming more flexible, but that also means being available at all times, even in your regular jobs. So it is interesting that how working practices are changing for everybody. With suicidal behaviours, I think we have to be, I'm going to mention this, and I think it's important to say that this can be a very emotive topic for people. And if this is a subject that you're finding particularly difficult to hear about, please do get in touch with somebody that you trust and talk to them about this if you're experiencing this yourself. You can contact a local service, perhaps for the Samaritans, or you can talk to your local doctor, but we'll come on to that a bit. But please reach out if this is a very difficult topic for you at the moment. So the early warning signs of mental health issues can include losing interest in activities that we've previously enjoyed, and this can also be in the work that people have been doing. We can talk about underperforming at work with no explanation, but sometimes at the moment, people might be really struggling because their income has been taken away from them. That is going to increase their anxiety levels. It's going to make people worry. Perhaps they're having difficulty with sleeping, so this is leading to exhaustion and that listlessness or restlessness that we experience when we haven't been properly rested. Withdrawing from life, with family, with friends, and even changes in appetite, such as reducing your food intake or overeating or binging and purging. These are signs that the early warning signs of a mental health issue. We talk about changes in perceptions, such as seeing things or hearing things that others don't, and I think it's also an interesting topic because when you move into the virtual world, perhaps you are, to a certain extent, seeing and hearing things that other people in the physical room will not be, perhaps. So, but if you notice that you are starting to see something or hear something or taste something or touch something in the physical world that nobody else is experiencing, this is a sign as well. We want to be mindful of how people cope under very, very stressful situations. So self-harming behaviour is common. You might notice on somebody signs of cuts or bruising to unusual areas of the body. You might notice people covering up when they never used to, or covering up their whole body in the height of summer, which is an unusual time to do that. Perhaps marks to the upper legs, the chest, or the upper and lower arms. So if you see any of these signs, that could be a signal as well. One of the things that people are also talking about is they wish to end their life, or they're talking about wishing to end their life on the back of the losses that they've experienced. So on Reddit, for example, people are saying that there isn't a way forward for them. They feel ashamed, perhaps, they feel guilty. They don't want to admit that they haven't been successful in this particular area of work. They potentially see that this is the only way out, that people would be better off without them. So when you hear people talking or writing about ending their own life, perhaps they're making plans. You may even notice that they're getting in touch with a lot of their friends and family and having almost like an informal goodbye, giving away belongings, writing out wills, things like that, could be a sign that somebody has potentially decided, right, this is the only way forward for me. So it's important to watch out for these signs and signals. You can always seek help. Mental illness is treatable, or mental distress, an acute crisis situation, it's always treatable. You can call your local emergency number if you feel that you or someone you know is not able to keep themselves safe. So in the UK, it's 999. North America, it's 911. Australia, it's 000. In the European Union, it's 112. And in the United Arab Emirates, it's 998 or 999. And that's in an emergency situation. If you feel that you can wait, if you feel you can keep yourself safe, make an emergency appointment with your local doctor, your family doctor, or general practitioner, or even a trained therapist or counsellor or psychologist. I hope that people are also able to access online support. If you are having a difficult time, contact your local Samaritans, for example. Get online and try and speak to somebody, and find local support groups or online support groups as well. There's always help there. There is always a way to find help, and don't be afraid to reach out. So that's everything from me for today. I'd really love to hear your questions, if you have any, about mental health. And thank you very much for being here. So how do you start a supportive conversation, really? Or how do you feel about approaching someone? One of the things I've noticed is people are still quite unsure about approaching someone, even if it's someone they know well, when they notice a change in their behaviour, for example, withdrawing from activities or withdrawing from family life, social groups. You've noticed that they always seem tired, or they're not getting enough sleep. They're losing weight, or perhaps they're putting on weight, and you think, oh, how do I approach this? And I think that's always the hardest step for people to take, the first one. So I always say, be brave. It's okay to go and ask somebody or talk to somebody about something if you notice what's going on. So I could go up to you, Stella, and say, Stella, I've noticed you haven't been around very much lately. Is everything okay? And it's very gentle and it's very casual. So it's not like you're going in there and giving them a bit of a grilling, actually. Starting a supportive conversation, also not judging. So, not telling people, if you say to somebody, oh, you'll be fine, or just pull yourself together, these sorts of phrases are very dismissive and stigmatizing as well. So, you may have different values and beliefs to the person that you're speaking to, and it's important to keep your values and your beliefs to yourself and just listen, have a listening ear. gently encourage people to open up and talk to you about what they're experiencing. And hopefully you build a rapport with them, and you can say, listen, it might be helpful if you talk to someone about this, or maybe we can check in tomorrow. If they're not sure about talking to somebody, then go back to them and say, listen, why don't we catch up again tomorrow? I'll give you a call, or we'll meet for a coffee, whatever that might be, and slowly, gently start those conversations. It is. Yeah. So I'm just gonna. So my understanding is, somebody spends a lot of time on social media. They feel compelled to spend that time on social media, and they're feeling. How do they move away from that? Is that, how do yeah. Oh, how do you bring them back to? Well, to be honest, I would be more interested in finding out why they have decided to, to deactivate their account, for example, or to not post as much as they are posting. It depends how well you know them. You might just know them through social media, or you might know them in person as well. But if you notice that somebody has kind of taken a step back for a while, and there doesn't seem to be a reason for it, get in touch and just ask them, hi, you haven't been active lately. Are you okay? Um, and hopefully they'll get back to you, and you can even do it in person. There's nothing wrong with giving them a call, or arranging to meet as well. So it wouldn't necessarily be my first instinct to try and draw them back to social media. It would be to find out why they're not active anymore. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a huge subject, mental health, for the crypto world. It's something that seems to be becoming more and more obvious, and I think one of the things, in just doing some reading this week, is talking about online safety. It seems that people are actually putting themselves at risk. They're turning off their safety controls, and they're becoming vulnerable to sexual assaults, for example, physical assaults. So just reminding people to stay safe online, not giving out personal details, like when you're going on a trip, or what your address is, or family pictures, things like that. Just being very mindful of your own personal safety when you are online. And if you are struggling, please just reach out to somebody that you trust. and hopefully you'll have a sympathetic ear and they can help you and support you.